Hi everyone, welcome to Reviewia Talks. Today we are going to talk about trust and why building trust in an organization is critical. We have seen in the last 18 months since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic that a lot of employees have complained about mental stress, owing to work. And a large part of it is contributed by the fact that organizations or their reporting managers uh, were not very sure, given that they were working from home, how much of work would get done. So, apart from the fact that it was completely unforeseen, there was a lot of unclarity and chaos on the personal side for employees of almost every organization. They still had to deal with a lot of this suspicion or lack of trust from their reporting managers or the critical stakeholders in their respective organizations. Now, I'm not saying that every organization had this issue, but if you look at data, people have said, they've mentioned that their mental stress has gone up drastically owing to the fact that there is a lot more work, conference calls, video calls, which have been made part of their workday. And a large part of the reason which has contributed to these additional reviews and conference calls is the suspicion to make sure that work is getting done sufficiently or as per the expectation. Now, for starters, maybe for the first 2 3 months, it was understandable. It was a big transition. People were not sure, leaders were not sure, nobody was sure how things will pan out. But it's been almost close to 2 years now. This is the new normal. People mostly are working from home. They are in a remote setup. Uh, but even now, unfortunately, in certain geographies, in certain societies, it still remains a big problem where employees have to always justify that while they are at home, they are at work. And specific to a society like India, inherently India has been a society where there is lack of trust. It's a trust deficit society, and for many valid reasons. There have been so many instances where uh, you know, generally people have broken each other's trust, and the most obvious thing to do is not to trust people so easily. Uh, However, I'll tell you the disadvantage of having that approach. So while initially you might feel that you're under control, you know what your employees are doing, what your team is doing, because you're doing reviews with them every fourth hour of the day. But what happens is, people kind of get to know that you're doing all of this because somewhere you're not trusting them. And once that becomes, well known or apparent amongst your team, they would not go the extra mile. They would just create an attitude where they would want to ensure that whenever you are checking whether their work is done or not, they would want to survive that. They would want to come clean on that effort. And that would result in employees just delivering the bare minimum. Now, you can very well imagine if a large part of the workforce is just delivering the bare minimum, then there is no way that the organization is going to move forward. There's no way that growth will happen because things will be static. So that's why it is important. You can only do so much as one individual, as a manager, as a leader. How many reviews will you take? How much control can you possibly personally handle? So if you are serious about growth, especially in this setup, this is the new normal. People are not going to be in the office sitting under your nose where you can watch what they're doing. You got to alter your leadership style. You got to bring in more trust. And you got to bring in more controls as well, but they have to be logical controls. They can't be controls like, there are instances where people have been forced to say you have to keep your video on all the time. Okay, that is a clear signal that you're not trusting the person. Now, and it becomes very intrusive. See, not everybody has a home office. People are working from various setups. So to force employees to keep their videos on all the time would just get them distracted from doing the job at hand. So I think organizations, big or small, which are serious about growth, they need to embrace this change. They need to align to the fact that This is the new normal. People would be working from all sorts of locations, and there is no point trying to control them or track them all the time. Put some logical controls, but at the end of the day, trust them. And if you trust them, is there a chance of your trust getting broken? Sure. But chances are that if you trust 10 people, maybe two or three of them will break your trust. But the other seven or eight, once they get to know that you trust them, they would go the extra mile. That extra pressure that they deal with in terms of just proving themselves to you, that will be off their head. They can be free, they'll do their work, they'll think creatively, they will take much more ownership and deliver and contribute significantly more to the growth of your organization or your function that you're leading. So that's why it is imperative. It was always imperative. As a leader, you had to trust your team to build a team which is reliable. But more so now, now the setup has changed. You got to bring in a new brand of leadership. And as I mentioned earlier, put down some logical controls. Don't put controls on, example like you keep a video on for 8 hours. You measure people on their outcome metrics. If you've given a task, see if the task is getting completed or not within the promised period of time. Rather than asking, okay, you were to do this for 8 hours, have you done it for 8 hours or not? The person might do it in 2 hours, which should be fine. Person might do it in 16 hours also. That should be the person's problem, not yours. Till the time the outcome is as per the expectation. So I think culturally we need to, as leaders, you need to kind of align yourself a little better, put in some new controls. At the end of the day, you need to send out the message to your team that you trust them. Believe me, once your team knows that you trust them, they will go the extra mile. Else, they'll be just busy proving to you that they are working, which is not a very happy scenario for a leader. You will limit your growth, you will limit the organization's growth. So, trust your team. And if you do that, trust me that you will sleep peacefully at night. I think this was a useful message. Thank you so much.